listening to Xposed Living, Be Ageless, the podcast where we drop the masks, flip the script, and talk real life, real love, and real leadership unfiltered. I'm Stacey Vanthuyne, coach, speaker, entrepreneur, and founder of the Xposed Living movement that's redefining what it means to live, lead, and grow at any age. We talk identity, reinvention, belief, and freedom from the bedroom to the boardroom. Yes, we go there. This is not about staying young. This is about waking up. So if you're done with the shoulds and craving more fun, more freedom, more truth, more you, then grab your favorite drink, your bestie, maybe your journal. It's time. Let's get exposed. Welcome back to Xposed Living. Today's episode is with a guest that some of you may know. And if you haven't met him yet, I tell you that you're in for a treat. He's one of those people who seems to be everywhere and somehow knows everyone. Ken G is the president of AK Media, a strategic video storyteller, event host, broadcaster, entrepreneur, and what I'd call one of Alberta's greatest connectors. What first caught my attention, and this is a true story, Ken, wasn't your resume, it was your LinkedIn presence. While most people are promoting themselves, Ken was promoting everyone else, highlighting people, celebrating wins, and connecting dots. Ken's story is one of reinvention, intuition, resilience, and following the pull when the path becomes clear. From a broadcaster at the tender age of 14 to running a global transportation company to becoming one of Edmonton's most recognized entrepreneurs and relationship builders. This is not a typical business conversation. This is about people, pivots, visibility, and what it really means to stay relevant. So Ken, welcome to Xposed Living.
What an introduction. I can hardly wait to meet myself.
Hey, you're a special man. You know, it is fascinating to me, as I was saying, your story from like 14 broadcasting to going through all of the different adventures you've had to now even going back to the roots of broadcasting as a horse. What do I call you?
A horse racing announcer.
A horse racing announcer. Thank you. So I'm curious to know that you've reinvented yourself multiple times. What reinvention intentionally for you was the most impactful, or what excites you to pivot?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because I think throughout my life I've had to be very resilient and have had to reinvent myself a number of times. And it wasn't until recently that I kind of thought that a lot of my life has been by design. Yeah. Because a lot of the things that I've wanted to do in life are exactly the things that I've accomplished and I've set out to do. A lot of the things haven't. A lot of the things have come my way because of circumstances. But I think the most impactful is being able to have taken the passions that I had in life. Number one or two passion would be horse racing, and be able to turn that into a career. And so I feel very blessed, very fortunate that I'm able to say that I can go to work every day and work in that field and work with my passion and actually do something that I love doing. You know, oftentimes life is about doing what you need to do, right? Yeah. To pay the bills. And that's great. We all have to have work. We all have to have a way to develop income. But I really feel fortunate that I'm able to do that in the field and with one of the passions that I have.
I love that you said you created life by design. It's sometimes such an impactful thing to look back and be like, oh my gosh, this actually happened. Sometimes we can get so stuck on thinking about what we don't have that we never really take that moment to look back and be like, holy, look how far I've come. What have I created here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's been 100% necessarily good. You know, sometimes chasing the things that you want to do maybe are not, they're so overwhelming and they're so consuming that you want to do them. And maybe you miss other opportunities. But, you know, I think what I've been talking about is just that, you know, when it all comes to an end, I don't think I will have any regrets that I missed doing anything that I wanted to do in life.
I love that, because it's always one of my favorite quotes with Wayne Dyer, and says, like, don't let the music die in you. And there's this conception around things is that life will be full of happiness. Like you said, it's not all good. But without those challenging times, I don't think it's as fulfilling, because you wouldn't even know great or good if there was never a challenge.
Right. I don't think that we're meant to struggle through life, but I
No.
think struggling and getting through things really helps develop your character, builds your character, right? Like I remember first pivoting and changing to a career of getting into corporate sales. I mean, I went from being a broadcaster into corporate sales, and those are two so different careers. And throughout my sales career, I've never really ever had anything handed to me. I've never gone to an organization to sell and have them say, "Hey, well, why don't you take over this very bountiful territory because it already makes money." And so even from that experience, learning that I've had to learn how to beat the bushes to develop business. All of those things are character building, and those things are always things that stay with you. And when you have that background, it makes you very resilient and it makes you very resourceful because you've learned how to deal with challenges rather than have things handed to you.
So important. I think a lot of times resiliency right now and developing that grit can be a lost art, truthfully.
Oh,
Do you have
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me, the lesson that I've learned from that is keep your feet moving. You always
Mm,
hear that expression. And keeping your feet moving sometimes at the time doesn't feel so good. It's something that you feel like you just have to do to get through things. But eventually, keeping your feet moving does pay off, whether it's the next day or the next week or a month from now. I can look back at all the times that I've gone through tough times, just kept my feet moving, not thinking that it was just for any exercise except not to go crazy and get too disappointed about things. And yet, I find that those little things that you do by keeping your feet moving can often lead to reward.
yeah, I love that. I think a lot of people, they do get set back, and sometimes
Hmm.
it's hard to move forward. But without that forward, people can just stay in one place for so long, ruminating around what went wrong. And that's something that's so contagious about your energy, because you can tell. I don't know necessarily what this step is going to take, but I know not taking one isn't going to do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's about giving yourself a lot of grace too, right? Because, when those things you're going through a lot of things, I'm my own worst critic. When you're a public facing person, you have a lot of critics. So it's really hard to go on social media sometimes when things like announcing or broadcasting or having opinions. But I think that being able to keep your feet moving, get through those things and stay focused on what you want are also very important as well.
Okay, you brought up something. I'm going to come back to that. But I have a question. What has reinvention given you that staying safe never could have?
Oh, it's opened up doors. It's opened up opportunity for me. One of the things that I often say to my kids is, if you don't ask, you don't get, right? And sometimes we think that we build all these walls, we build excuses for ourselves, and we create these walls in our own mind about why we can't or why we shouldn't do something. And it's just a matter of asking, right? If you
Yeah.
don't ask about something, you don't get about anything. And we are all so worried about what other people will think. And as I get older, I realize it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks because, again, like I said, I just don't want to have any regrets.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that was the one thing I wanted to come back to is you can get to this place where you are out in public, have a certain identity, a certain level of influence. And when it comes sometimes to saying what you mean, if it like isn't with the current thought process, it can be intimidating at times to share. But when you are an influencer, why people look up to it and say, like, I want you to give me the truth. I want you to share. And I agree. I think it stops a lot of people from doing what they want is thinking, how will other people perceive me? It's like, how do you perceive
Yeah.
yourself?
Well, I think what's important is to always stay objective, right? Because everyone has an opinion, everybody has strong feelings about things, but so does everybody else. And it doesn't mean that you're more right or you're more wrong than anybody else. And I think that's something that I brought from the skill set of being a news reporter in the day
Mm.
was learning how to be objective. And I think that's where what I've really noticed in the last few years with social media and the polarization of opinions, no one's objective anymore. Everybody just wants their opinion to be heard. They don't want to hear anybody else's opinion, which is very different than being a Gen Xer, growing up and always learning and hearing in school that everybody has an opinion. I remember one very popular broadcaster in Edmonton used to say on his open line show, you have a democratic right to be wrong. And I really like that because, we all have an opinion. So staying objective is one really important thing. And I think that's one thing about when you talk about my having this presence on LinkedIn. I'm not there to stir the pot. I am there to be objective, and I am there to I like to just encourage other people.
I love that. What admires me about that is like that ability to stay curious, recognizing no one knows everything. And there's so
Right.
many different avenues and perceptions we can take a situation from. You and I can listen to the same conversation, hear two different things. Both of us are right. One's like
Hmm.
what you said, one's not more right. If you like lean into it and stay curious, that comes also with confidence and security in knowing who you are.
Well, I think so. Hey, I'm just as insecure about a lot of things as everybody else is, right?
Yeah.
But I think one of the important things is knowing what you believe. That's really
Yeah.
important, right? I
Yeah.
think starting off knowing what your values are and not wavering from them, that helps you through life in terms of your boundaries and what
Yeah.
you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, and I imagine with what you do too, and you're hearing people's stories all the time and the people that you work with, you have to be very objective and you have to understand that they're coming from a different world and a different point of view, right? When you're working with them, when you first start to work with them.
100%. I mean, one thing that's really helped me is like recognizing the power that we have in perception, in that it's everything just is. And we get to make the decision how we interpret that. And if it doesn't feel good, then lean into it of figuring out how to make it feel good and ask the questions.
Right. Well, isn't life all about perspective? I
Yeah.
mean, really, when we go through life, it's how we view things, how we
Yeah.
view others.
Yeah.
And so perspective and understanding how to be objective when you understand somebody's perspective, I think that's really important.
So good. Hey, I've got to go into connection as a strategy and like, ask you a few questions. Do you see connection as a skill or a mindset or responsibility? Share with me.
For me, connection is everything.
Yeah.
Knowing somebody, meeting people, those are great skills. And I meet so many people when I go to events or have just met so many people through business, but there's usually a few that you really connect with, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
know that.
Mm-hmm.
When we first met at the event, there was already a connection there because we sort of understood each other and knew each other, even though we haven't met in person. I think that's always really important is developing. There's a number of people that you have to develop connection with. I think that's critical to any kind of value relationship. I don't know if that answered your question, but connection is a super important thing.
Well, it does answer my question because I think it's a little bit of everything. It's how you approach it. The more you do it, the more effective you become in it. And then ultimately, if depending on what you do, it's a responsibility to grow your own self. I'm a huge supporter of taking accountability and saying, it's up to me to do this. So it is my responsibility. And the more I can give, then the more impact I create and life just gets better.
Yeah,
I say it so fluidly, but I mean, it really is. I think we complicate life and connection sometimes by worrying about ourselves versus having the focus on the other person.
yeah, I think you're right on that. I think accountability has been something really that has come across my plate in the last year, understanding our roles in accountability, especially as Gen Xers, as we get older and we have children. Accountability is really important in the relationships that we have.
Expand on that for me. You mean in like the follow-up, or what do you mean when you say accountability?
Well, I think as you get older and you realize what you're after in life, that accountability is important not only to yourself, but in the people that you're interacting with, right?
Yeah.
And without accountability, I don't think that you can have a quality relationship or quality relationships with other people. I think we all have to own our stuff, and we're all
Yeah.
big kids now, right? We all have to know what we need to be accountable to. So that's all I mean about that.
Yeah, the follow through.
Yeah, for sure. I think
If
it
you,
it determines the kind of person you are too with accountability.
yeah, I agree. Say what you mean what you say. When it comes to networking, what do you see that most people maybe misunderstand? Or if someone is just getting into networking and they want to be more successful in it, share some of your tips and tricks.
Well, I'll take one of the things that you say all the time. You talk a lot about being intentional. And I think that's, we were just talking offline before we got in here about being a networking junkie. And I think a lot of times networking ends up being a social event for people, which is great because, yeah, absolutely, there's a social component to it. But every time I go to a networking meeting, it's intentional. There's a goal that I have is I'm there to meet certain people in an area that I'm needing help in at that particular time. I go in there with intention, with a goal to learn what certain number of people or other people are doing or certain people are doing.
Yeah.
I think that's really the focus of it. It is an opportunity to book off work for a couple of hours, which isn't a bad thing sometimes, but really make the most of your networking. Why is it that you were there and who are you there to meet? You know, business networking to me has always been about going there to find a way to develop business and develop those business relationships.
Yeah. You often hear the quote, your network equates to your net worth. Do you
Right.
believe in that?
Oh, absolutely. I really believe that who you associate with is so important, right?
Yeah.
I think you become like the people that you associate with. You develop those traits, and that's not through osmosis, but that's through hanging with people and learning about them. So yes, absolutely.
So let's pivot a little bit and go into storytelling and what you do now with AK Media.
Sure.
You help people tell their stories through video. What do you find? Is it true that most people feel a little bit uncomfortable or don't find their story to be valuable? What holds some people back from telling their stories in your experience?
Well, here's the first thing to understand is that everybody has a story. We live in this age of Instagram influencers where a lot of young people they want to show everything on the internet about what they're doing and what they do from day to day. And believe it or not, there are a lot of people who are just very quiet and they don't either want to tell their story or know how to tell their story. And so I think one of the things that I bring to AK Media that is different in video messaging and video storytelling is using my background as a news reporter to be able to find out and get people to tell me their stories. You got to remember, I come from the day of news reporting where if there was an event that happened, half an hour ago in the city, I would have to pull a phone book out, if anybody remembers what a phone book is. I'd have to pull a phone book out, try to figure out who to call to talk to, and find out exactly what happened, and actually persuade them to actually let me turn on the recorder so that I could interview them on the phone. And so that all would have to happen within 15 or 20 minutes, right? And within that hour, have a story produced and be able to produce an interview where somebody was telling us their account of what had happened. So that skill, being able to get people to open up and tell me what they're all about, has been really important. And so you may see on my website at akmedia.world where I've had people who are business owners who will open up and tell me their story about why they're doing what they are doing, how they got into the field that they are currently working in, and maybe tell me the stories that resonate with them from what they've been able to do. So that is definitely something that I really enjoy doing. I love hearing people's stories. I remember reading some books before I became a news reporter. One book was actually called How to Ask Questions, believe it or
Cool.
not. And I don't even think it's in print anymore. But really what it talked about, as a lot of books talk about, is taking a genuine interest in people and really find them interesting. And I think when we all start at that is a muscle that we have to learn how to exercise because a lot of times we're not in the mood to hear other people's stories. And so learning how to do that, but actually taking a genuine interest in finding out what people's stories are, that's been a lot of fun. And I that's the best part of what I get to do with AK Media is find out what people's stories are and have them tell me things that are meaningful to them.
I love that you bring back the reference of how different it was to get out a story, even a mere, what are we talking, 20 years ago? Not even?
Sure, 20 years ago, sure.
With a phone and a phone book. You must have some good BS radar. Like you must be like, I can snip you out.
Absolutely. I try not to prejudge and I try to be objective, as I said, but yes, my intuition is I'm empathic, I have intuition, and you feel it. You feel it in your guts when you know what people are telling you. And so that leads you to ask questions from questions, right? When you've asked a question of somebody and they tell you something, you know when it's worth pursuing and asking that next question.
That is so good. We talked about earlier the power of perception and now intuition, both muscles that we were given. And I think for so many of us, they've atrophied a little bit because
Hmm.
I've found, at least for myself on my own journey, was about I stopped trusting myself as much in certain times and listening to that intuition, reading the room more or asking somebody else what they thought before trusting my own self. And I love what you're saying is that so one of the skill sets you developed and continue to develop, especially as a broadcaster and a reporter, was that ability to listen to your gut and read the energy.
Yeah, God gave us two ears and a mouth, one mouth, as they say, because we're supposed to be listening twice as much as we talk. And I think that's one of the really key things when we talk about all of this higher learning and intuition. I think sometimes it is about developing the intuition, but sometimes it's about clearing the noise from our head
Mhm.
and being able to hear what we are supposed to hear. And for me, that is just as critical about intuition and discernment as actually the skill of listening, right? It's about getting that noise out of the way so that you can actually hear what you're being told.
While you develop the skill of focus, really
Hmm.
tuning in to so much noise around on. And I think that as time goes on and we have more distractions with our phones and things, it's becoming a lost art even too, is like that ability to focus, be more interested than interesting in your own self.
Right? What's that phrase that I've heard is people don't care what you know till they know that you care. And so
Mm,
when you're having a conversation with somebody, I'm always there to listen to hear what they're actually really trying to tell me rather than, and that's part about, when I was being a news reporter, when I first started out doing that, we're all in these scrums trying to interview people. And I think when you first start out doing that, you just want to make sure you don't look stupid when you're asking a politician a question. So you're
sure.
forever trying to think of what is the question that I should ask, when perhaps you should be thinking about what they just told you, which would lead you to the next question to ask of people. And that's not just reporters interviewing politicians. That's about every day, when we talk to our kids, when we work with our kids and something's bothering them, we want to find out what it is. To, really when we learn that skill, right? About learning to listen to them and then ask the next right question to find out what it really is that we need to help them with.
So important. I haven't always been perfect at that one. I have a question when it comes to announcing races. This is a passion of yours to become a
Mhm.
horse race announcer. And what does that give you that business never did?
Oh my goodness. You need to come to the booth and visit me next month when we start calling races again.
I am
Um,
absolutely going to.
Yeah, I'd love to have you up there and see what that's all about because we first started out, and I said a lot of my life was by design. One of the things that I've really learned about myself is that I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie. A lot of the things that I've done in terms of career have been to get that rush. I haven't done a lot of boring jobs, career path things in my life. And that's a good thing and it's a bad thing because when you come down from that every day that you're at work, you've got to find something that's going to pick you up again. So what I really get from calling races is it's extremely strategic. There is a lot of thinking. There are so many things that I'm multitasking in my head before, during, and after a race. But I always tell people that it's like this, especially with standardbred racing or harness racing, it's a 2-minute race and it's that ability to tell that story. Working within your own mind is a bit of a rush, knowing that you're developing a story to tell to people within that 2 minutes, picking out the right words to accurately describe what's going on, and the story crescendos to the home stretch. And as you're building the story for people in that last 12 or 15 seconds as they're coming down the home stretch, and they hit that wire and you've built up that excitement for people and then they cross the wire, it comes down, that is a rush. And I get to do that, 8 to 10, 12 times a day. And then you have to decompress after that because it's such a rush, right? So
Yeah. I mean, it kind of went full circle as far as the momentum of it, the timing, listening to your instinct, choosing the correct words to go onto it.
yeah, absolutely. And so that is one thing that I get out of doing that. And I really am fortunate because I get the best of both worlds. I get to be in the business world where I guess I also get a bit of a rush when I get to meet people or I get to close a deal. I get to close something. That is a rush to me as well. And I think anybody who's in sales or in business development gets to understand that. I'm sure with what you do, Stacey, with when you see that aha moment that someone gets what you've been telling them and they're putting into practice, that's got to be a rush for you too.
I mean, when we can do what we love and we know that it makes a difference, to me, that's like the best feeling in the world.
I think we all have to find that one thing, right, that gives us that rush and that gives us that excitement.
Uh,
And like I said, I feel very blessed and fortunate that I get to do that on many fronts, owning my own business as well as doing the racing. But
it's interesting though, Ken, because I think that a lot of us Gen X's, as time goes on, comfort sometimes can dampen that spirit around finding that. To your point, it's like you have to pivot to find something new that reignites it. And so, how do you do that?
I think as from the generation that we come from too, there's been expectations of a timeline, right? You're supposed to
Hmm.
do this, you're supposed to get into school, you're supposed to stay in a career for 30 years, you're supposed to retire, then you're supposed to go on cruises. And I'm not knocking that. I think that's been great. Sometimes I've been envious of that. I've looked at people that have had lives where it's been set and it's been very predictable and they have accomplished and they've set out to do what they wanted to do. And sometimes I do look at that and think maybe I should have done that as well. But then I do look back at all the things that I've done, and I think really what still drives me is try things that you maybe wanted to try when you were younger and you haven't done it. If you're still trying to find that fire, no, I'm not interested in jumping out of a plane. That seems to be one that you see on dating websites all the time, right? It's like I want to meet somebody that I can jump out of a plane with. It's like no. No, I'm not doing that. There are many other things that I would love to do. That is not one of them. So I think really exploring your passions, what you find fun, because when you go down those rabbit holes, sometimes you'll find that they're even more fun than you thought they might have been.
I agree with you. And I think that even people who have lived this life, and I mean, for a lot of us, Gen X, we're getting to that year where it was supposedly to retire, but then finding, is this really the story I want to create? Or, oh, I thought I would be older by this time, right? I remember looking back, I'm 50, and I'm like, are you kidding? I'm just getting started. So it's funny how this definition of retirement has changed. It's not the same as what we were taught when we were kids.
Yeah, different strokes for different folks. If that's where
Hmm.
people's paths are and they feel like these are their twilight years and that's their mentality, that's great if that's what they want. It's funny that you said that because I actually said that to somebody a few months ago, which is I just feel like I'm getting started.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, is that a good thing? Maybe. Maybe I'll be very tired when it's finally my time. But I feel like there's so much that I still want to do and that I've still sort of started for myself
Yeah.
that now is not the time to think about doing that.
I love it. That's why I knew I was instantly connected to you. Okay, so I've never done this on the show, but today I was like, what can I do different with Ken? And I thought of this fun segment that I'm going to call the connector file because it's for you. And this is a quick segment then that we're going to call the connector file. The first thing that comes to your mind when I say these following things, okay? You ready?
Sure. Fried chicken.
Exactly. Okay, perfect. One word that people use to describe you.
Tenacious.
One quality you look for before making an introduction.
Before making an introduction.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Um, genuine.
That intuition. A
Yeah.
connection that surprised you.
Boy, I think that there have been some newsmakers that I have met that have really surprised me going back to the day. I got to cover the last Stanley Cup winning Oilers.
You did?
That's how far back I go. And in years previous to that was the Gretzky Oilers. So I was in the dressing room for all those last number of seasons. I would say that meeting certain Oilers is the connection where the connections surprised me. Some I thought were pleasantly surprised me. Some didn't. Some were totally not what I expected. So I would say that.
The biggest networking mistake people make.
The biggest networking mistake people make is going to spray and pray. They want to go and just talk and try to sell you their widget and tell you the benefits of their widget like a robot without even And it's one thing to spray and pray, but not even listening to the feedback. That's the biggest mistake. I think just go to networking meetings, have fun, learn to meet people, learn about people, go to have an expectation that other people want to be heard. I think that's a big thing.
Build the relationship. Announcing a race or hosting an event.
That's a tough one. I get it. One of the things that I was really grateful for being at the chamber was being able to create and host some pretty freaking awesome events. And I would have to say that I would pick calling a race. Yeah, for sure. Pick calling. It's just by a whisker, though.
Age is a number or a mindset, my friend.
Age is a mindset. Absolutely.
Business today requires more strategy or more courage, Ken?
Courage.
Yeah.
Courage. Absolutely. We're in a world today where there's so many other people that are doing what we want to do, and you get to see it, and you get to criticize yourself for what you're not doing, and you get to hear them criticize you as a competitor, for sure.
So good. Ken, if people want to know more about yourself or how have you helped them tell their story, how do they get a hold of you?
Check out my website, akmedia.world. I just put that up a few weeks ago and I'm still fine-tuning it, but I'd love to have a conversation. I often have people just call me and just say, hey, I saw your website, not sure this is going to be a fit, but tell me what it is that you think you could do. This is what I'm looking to solve. My email's ken@akmedia.world, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to find out what you're doing. I love to hear the stories. Even if it doesn't materialize into anything business-wise between us, I love to hear what people are working on.
Honestly. Ken, this conversation is exactly why Xposed Living exists. Real conversations with real leaders about reinvention, connection, and living fully expressed. You don't just build businesses, you build bridges, and you remind people that success doesn't come from staying the same. It comes from challenging yourself, having the courage, and as you said so eloquently, just keeping those feet moving. Before we close, I want to ask you one last question. What does living exposed mean to you in this season of your life?
It means being authentic, being real to everybody, I would say to yourself. If only one person's being real about yourself, keeping it real, be authentic.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. Make sure that if you haven't linked up with Ken, you do find him on LinkedIn. I'm telling you, your energy, your ability to share your story. I could talk to you all day. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being a guest today on Xposed Living.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Honestly. And for those that listen, if this episode resonated with you, share it out. If you get an intuitive nudge to reach out to Ken that you want to share your story, you're looking to build more courage and confidence within yourself, that's what we're here for. Until next time, my friends, stay bold, stay brave. That's it for today's episode of Xposed Living, Be Ageless. But this is just the beginning. If this episode made you feel something, share it. Tag me. Send it to a friend. Let's start the conversation we can be having all along. No shame, no guilt. Unfiltered, raw, real, exposed. And if you're ready to go deeper, join us inside the Xposed Living Facebook community, where we take this work off the podcast and into real life. Know this, your change starts when your excuses die. Because this life, this one wild, ageless, unforgettable life is waiting on you. This is your time. This is your truth. This is Xposed Living.